Hello, everyone. Welcome to Twirl's first webinar, Balancing Brand Messaging and Authenticity. My name is Rachel Nielsen, and I am the Operations and Content Lead here at Twirl, and I'll be your host today. It'll last around 30 minutes, and we'll have a Q&A session at the end. Let's get on into it. In this webinar, I'm going to show you how you can craft effective UGC briefs that align with your brand messaging while also fostering authenticity. And so by the end of our time together, I really hope that you're going to learn how to take the pressure off and successfully create a brief that is aligned with your ways of working, but also guarantees the results that you're achieving with your UGC project. And respects the creator boundaries, encourages authenticity, and also understanding that there's various options available to you to achieve optimal results. The reason why I really want to talk about this is to guide you towards a new mindset shift and understanding the way in which we as, brands, agency owners, creative freelancers can approach creator briefs and UGC strategy. I feel like we're at the point now where UGC has been around for 1, 2, 3 years now. Along this time, I feel like there's been a lot lost in the mix where it's become so much of, trying to achieve the perfect script. You'll see people online like, here's a winning formula. And there's a lot of noise out there, and I'm sure we can all resonate with this, that it can be quite overwhelming sometimes to take in all of that. And questions are asked, what works for me? What works for my brand? How do I know that this is going to work on social? In this webinar, I hope that we can go from viewing creator briefs as like this rigid, one-size-fits-all process focused primarily on achieving such like brand-centric goals and perfecting the script, to hopefully recognizing that creator briefs can be flexible. They can be collaborative tools, designed to foster authenticity, storytelling, and actually build meaningful relationships, not just between you and the creator, but most importantly with your audience, and ultimately enhancing both the brand messaging and the creator authenticity. Because at the end of the day, that's what really makes UGC effective. So in here, we'll go through briefing strategies. I'll show you examples from our network, and hopefully at the end, you'll have some actionable takeaways and you're ready to dive deeper into your own UGC briefs. I take a lot of creative strategy calls as part of my role here on Twirl, and I noticed that a challenging part of these UGC campaigns is that brief creation process. We hear from two ends of the spectrum when it comes to creating a brief, where you could be struggling in the beginning, not knowing where to start, or even, you've been doing it for some time, but you're wondering, is this all there is to it? Is there more to it? What other options do I have? So you have two sides to it where, you might be coming from, let's say brand A, you're coming from a background in influencer marketing, well-versed with creating briefs. You might end up having to be very nitty-gritty with all of the details in order to achieve that final result. And then on the other hand, if you think of it as like a little scale, on the other hand, we've got a lot of people who, are completely new to this, new to UGC and creating a brief for the first time, where you'd prefer to let's just let the creator do what they see fit, put the product in their hands, let's just see what they come up with. Different results, sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't. And there's a lot in those two ends of the spectrum where like they both work, but there's certain things to bear in mind for both in order to find that harmony. And I think that's where we talk about it being a challenge and finding the balance between those two sides of too much detail, not enough detail. How can we come in the middle to find some harmony? So I believe there's 3 decisions to make to find that balance. It's how you approach the brief, recognizing there's different strategies available, one that works for you. Because at the end of the day, you're the one writing this brief. You have to work in a way that works best for you. And then from there, decide how you're going to approach and craft the brief. Then that goes into actually developing the brief in a way that provides clear guidelines, empowering creators, and tell that authentic story as a result. The third decision to make is what sort of relationship you're going to have with the creator. What is that partnership going to look like? Is this something where you just gift it to them and see what comes out of it? Is it something where you give them a fixed script and see what comes out of it? By establishing that from the very beginning, you are being transparent, and it makes everyone's lives easier, your life easier, because you know what you're expecting and what sort of relationship you want to have. And on the creator side, they get that guarantee that you know what you want, whether it's super detailed or not super detailed, and they know what sort of relationship to have with you, what boundaries there are, so that they can establish their own. First, most important thing, creators are the bridge between you and your ideal customer. We're talking about those two sides. You talk about the brand being on one end, your customers at the other end of the bridge. How are you going to come together to reach them? That's what creators are. You need to recognize them. And by finding this balance, we've seen a significant increase in creators willing to work with you. Projects on Twirl, receive much more applications. You also achieve better performance across your projects and ads. And most importantly as well, there's more insights that you can learn from it that go into your A/B testing so that you can continue to refine your briefing. I think that's one key takeaway from this, is that whichever way you decide to go about it, the end result should also be to keep an open mind and to keep learning. We're going to go into looking at fixed scripts versus open-ended briefs, going to go into best practices, and then in the end talking about collaborative script development. First and foremost, putting the user and user-generated content. If you're going to know how you're going to approach the brief, you need to know your buyer persona. What sort of questions are they asking? At what point in their journey are they willing to make this purchase? Is it the first time? Are they further along? These are things that you're already thinking about as a brand, and now you have to translate that into the UGC. Understanding the pain points, getting into their mindset. It's all stuff you're already doing, which is really great. And now we have to translate that into your dream creator. Your dream creator will be someone who fits into this buyer persona. They are potentially looking for answers, or they simply resonate with who this person is. Maybe it was who they were before they actually found a product. Maybe that product ended up being yours. By establishing this persona and knowing that it's the type of creator you're going to look for and putting that in your brief, you're going to attract the right creator. They know that they fit into the shoes. They're more inclined to work with you because they know that the brief to come is going to resonate with that, no matter how it looks. So that's the first step, understanding your buyer persona. So now we're going to go into fixed scripts versus open-ended briefs. And this will work for different people. I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm just saying that we've seen these two, and in both cases, we've seen success. In both cases, we've also seen them flop. Just based on our observations and what we've seen develop through the calls that we have, the feedback sessions that we host, here are some insights on how, whether you're a fixed script person or an open-ended brief person, you can meet in the middle to find that harmony. Fixed scripts. Now, UGC typically is like anti-fixed script, right? You're like, gosh, this is supposed to be authentic. Why are we now giving a fixed script to a creator? Like, does that make it feel less genuine, I get it. What we're going to see here is that we have to recognize that fixed scripts often is something that needs to do, whether you have come from a team where there's lots of regulations involved, where you have a team of copywriters behind you who have already spent years, perfecting this brand messaging. It makes sense to want to have a fixed script. And so I completely resonate with that some brands, it works best for them to have a fixed script. And you, as the person managing this project, might work better when you have a fixed script for the creator to follow. And there's some pluses to that. The content is more evergreen because you're planning long-term how you're going to use it. You can really maximize the footage if you've got something that's 60 to 90 seconds long and you're planning on how you can trim that down into maybe 3 little bite-sized clips. Really great. And it's also good for detail for those of you that have lots of regulations in place. But of course, you can't always guarantee an Oscar-worthy reenactment. These are UGC creators, not actors. If you wanted an actor, go find an actor. But for UGC, this can still work. And how does it work? Well, authenticity through the visual interpretation. When a creator, and you've established this at the beginning in your project description, when you've established that this creator fits into your persona, they're more than happy to then come into this fixed script agreement if the fixed script in question resonates with them. If they look at it and go, actually, this is exactly how I would put it together. You've taken the words from my mouth. It's perfect. More than happy to do the fixed script. And in fact, that will genuinely come through in the way that they perform the fixed script because you've established that. As well as the way they bring that to life. They could have it by a green screen. They could reenact the pain points. It'll be a lot more authentic and genuine, especially, and I think this is more of a tip actually, when you're working on fixed scripts. It's good to pull this from actual reviews that you've received from customers. Because if you're able to support that, you're not then shoving it in the creator's face and saying, hey, here's what we want you to say. It's more like, here's what people are actually saying. We need your help as a UGC creator to really bring this to life. And in turn, that footage itself can be used to encourage your customer base. Hey, if you really love our product, we'd encourage you to create a video similar to this, because that footage is then a realization of the genuine testimonial. And I think also another tip I've written down there is the flexibility to ad lib. Even if you've given them a script, I think it's great to suggest still that there's something that they would want to say in a different way or in a way that matches their tone of voice better. Room for that is really great. So let's go into our first example here. So this is worked with through an agency. So obviously the agency is already working with this brand. They're perfecting the copy needed. And so this is something they've come up with. They've outlined script copy, action description, the text overlay, all the nitty-gritty details, right down to the text overlay needed. In this situation, we found a creator that genuinely resonated with the script, and they were more than happy to bring this to life. As you can see in this GIF here, she was just so genuine. Like when she was saying these lines, it translated. And in turn, that boosted their success on it. There's visual flexibility to bring it to life, and it works. So this is a situation where with the fixed script, if you find the right creator for it, it can still work out. Now, we're going to go into the open-ended brief. This is for the type of brand where you're maybe new to UGC, or you're at a point where you have budget to scale and you're ready to just get content out there and you're ready to hear from anyone. And in these situations, we often get briefs where it's just, here's the product, here's all the USPs, make a video about it, whatever you see fit, which is great. That's really great. You'll receive genuine creativity. Creators get that flexibility, share their testimonials. You'll get a variety of content, but on the other hand, it's a hit or miss. You might end up getting lots of footage with no structure. You might end up getting 10 videos back, but they might all only touch on the same USP. And I think the way to find the middle ground in that, where you can still have some structure, is to provide that guidance. When it comes to open-ended briefs, which is great, you need to be able to give something to the creator to have them stick to something or assign, what points for which, because it still guarantees that they'll be completely 100% genuine. But in this way, you also know better how you're going to use that content. So for this example here, the brand actually provided a bunch of testimonial prompts. They're saying like, what skin condition have you had for a while? What does it feel like when it's on your skin? All these things that the creators then, turn on their camera, could film it because they have questions to follow. Sometimes the other end of the scheme where there's no testimonial prompts, it'll just end up them being listing off the USPs, which we don't want. So I think by providing these testimonial prompts, you're better set up to receive content that is open-ended and is creative, and you get that diversity, but also still meaningful and hits on your brand messaging in this. Here's another example where with an open-ended brief, sometimes it's more about the experience, less about hitting key points and more about creating an experience for the viewer. So in this case for Interflora, whenever they put a brief through, they say, mention what you love about the bouquet, describe how you felt. And so the creator has this creative liberty to film the footage, get all the flowers, get their reaction and all that. But there's certain questions that have been asked where they can really talk about it and put it into that 30-second clip in a way that is so creative and genuine, because there weren't any strict notes on that. And it really works for this type of product where you're focusing on the experience. Now that we've covered both ends of the spectrum, we've got the super fixed scripts, how that would work for you, open-ended briefs, how that would work for you. What if you don't know which one works best for you and you want to, I'd say test both, but there's also a way to meet halfway with it. And that's this third strategy that we're going to talk about, where there's actions on both sides needed, and it's definitely more of a collaborative endeavor. So you've got the brand action, where you're still providing the concept options, you're sharing the USPs to talk about, you're possibly even sending lists of scenes to film out. You've got the structure and your brand guidelines there. But then the creator has a choice and is more involved in this strategy where they're picking which resonates with them, highlighting USPs that are relevant to them instead of covering all of them. And they can then still have the flexibility to incorporate the scene's creativity. And I believe this collaborative approach ensures that both the brand's objectives and the creator's authenticity are maintained, resulting in an engaging and, effective content. So let's get into our first example here. Octopus Legacy. We've worked with them for over a year now, and it's been really interesting to see how they've developed their scripts over the past year. But it's really changed in where they used to only provide fixed scripts because of the regulations that they had, the different charities they were working with, but they've adapted this to now give more room for the creator's voice to shine through. And we've seen they've tripled how many creators are interested in working with them. But not only that, but we've had creators come forward and be like, oh, you know what? I really wish I had this product when I was going through so-and-so, and sharing their personal story, which in turn, Octopus Legacy came back and we're like, actually, we're going to tweak the briefs and now add this room of testimonial prompts that resonate with that creator. Here's an example here where they've written out the fixed script, and then they've mentioned here you can talk about personal insights. So and this is a situation where a fixed script has been put forward, but with room for the creator to share their personal story. It became this collaborative thing where it was both the creator's voice is really shining while the product and the key messaging is really the focal point. And together they had really great harmony, and the videos turned out so amazing. We're going to the next one. When you're finding the middle ground, when you're listing the key USPs in the brief, it's so important to go beyond that and actually talk about the why, the so, the how, connect them to actual pain points and benefits. Because a structure works well for a UGC video, definitely. Not saying goodbye to that. But when you're connecting them to USPs, that helps the creator understand exactly when they're saying that point, what to connect it with. Even if they understand the brand and everything, having this written down is so useful when they're actually developing their script. It resonates more, and they're normal people that are actual consumers of the product that are making this content. By sharing this as well, there's less back and forth, but then also the whole process will be more seamless, as we see in this example here, where one of the USPs for Lions Prep is that it's for convenience and time saving. But they go beyond that to say most people spend 7 hours a week shopping, prepping, cooking. And that really paints this picture of why it's so time saving. So by having that in mind, which the creator wouldn't already know, it really helps them when they're crafting their script to include that and go further instead of just listing it off like a checklist. Next one is having clear do's and don'ts. In this, I think even when you're giving an open-ended brief, do's and don'ts are a great way to hone that in to align with your brand messaging, because it's clear stuff not to say. You're giving free reins, but of course there's going to be some limitations on what can actually be achieved here. And it's so important to be transparent with the creator about this from the beginning, because we've had situations where you might not realize, oh, I didn't realize we had to omit that until compliance saw it. Only then did they flag it. Because then it ends up in this awkward situation where you might have to request a reshoot that pushes your timeline a bit. It's really useful when you're going for a more open-ended brief or structured brief to always include a key do's and don'ts section. So in this particular video with Protein Works, we had a vegan creator who was super excited to work with the brand, as they had already heard about them before. We're really excited, and she got free reign to actually work on this project. And of course there was a guide, but all the words were her own. She was putting them together, and it was really useful to have that clear what not to say section, so that when she was planning her points, she would keep that in mind. As a brand, you then receive the content back, and it's got all the flares, creativity, going off on points that you looked for, but it also omits those key things of what not to say and what to do. Really good way to manage that. And finally, collaborative script development. In these situations, and it's actually something we've been testing more recently through Twirl, might make it a permanent product feature to see how that streamlines it even further, where a brand will provide a good mix of detail, but still leaving it open to the creator. And we actually engage in a additional step now where the selected creator looks at this and then gets the time to work on a script that aligns with the brief, but also more importantly resonates with their tone of voice and getting how they really feel about it. And by putting it out into a document, which is, by the way, something they would already be doing naturally because they're planning their video. And as a creator, it makes sense to plan your video most times because then you actually know how you're going to manage your time. Don't see this as like we're not telling you to make the script, see it as a collaborative working progress. The creator works on a script and then we share that with the brand to then leave comments on. And by leaving comments, it's more just making sure that it's headed in the right direction, making sure that the tone of voice is on brand. And I think it also gives you as a brand that assurance before the creator starts filming that you're going to get something that is what you asked for and does even more than that. You can feedback it directly. As well as this suggestion here that I really like. It says with all the key points, a reminder to bring your own flair into it. So instead of saying up to 24 hours of hydration, encouraging the creator to say, leaves my skin feeling super hydrated. Using language that's more accessible. Encourage your creators to do that. They're more than happy to, as well as this collaborative thing. Like I said, then you'll know what type of creator you want to work with, and that will really ensure that harmony. So this is the general script / story structure that we have on Twirl when you use the brief builder and whatnot. And this is how it's normally laid out. And it's designed in this way to kind of meet that middle ground, but obviously you have to put in the work to paste what you need, outline if there are any specific hooks or simply options. And for the body of the brief, sometimes you want to give a suggestion on what type of storyline you're after. I've listed some suggestions on the side normally. Here's how you could do it, where you can list the USPs, remembering how to connect them to pain points, such and such. Sometimes it's even useful to have a bullet pointed list of B-roll shots that you want to weave in. This can be action shots, reaction shots, endorsement shots. I feel like that's a really good way to remember it so you actually know what you're writing down, if anything. Any suggestions for pace, colors, aesthetic? Keyword there, suggestions. I think it's really great for the creator to know that they're being supported and that they want to respect your boundaries, but knowing that they have room to make it their own. And especially with the call to action directing, letting them know where you're actually going to be directing viewers to. I feel like run, don't walk is very overused. It's something that always comes up in the calls. It's like, oh, should we say run, don't walk? And I'm like, I feel like that's been said a lot now, so maybe we should try something else. But I think not having something fixed specifically, but knowing where to direct them to, and then it'll flow naturally. You can have that collaborative script element. Laying it out like this provides structure, but the creator is able to write it in a way that's natural to them. Let's hone back in now. Finding that balance. So hopefully by now you have an idea of where you might stand. Are you more of a fixed script person where you need that detail, you need that control over the brief because of external factors, or maybe that's just the way you work? Hopefully then you can take inspiration from this to make sure that you're working with the right creator to bring that to life. And if you're more of an open-ended brief person, I hope you're able to approach the brief in a way where you're still giving some guides, but thinking more about what you want the content to be, what the long-term goal of it is going to be, so that the open-endedness doesn't leave you in a ballpark of all sorts of things that will take you weeks to finally put together and launch. Going through all this now, how you're going to approach the brief to find that balance, how you're going to craft the brief in a way that speaks to both the creator and ultimately your audience, and ultimately having that relationship with the creator from the get-go, knowing what the boundaries are, what your way of working is, because you'll attract the right creator that respects that way of working and actually that supports them in the best way they can work too. That's the end of this. I've wrapped up all my points, and now we're going to go into a Q&A session up to 10 minutes. How do you facilitate this collaboration as a platform? We'd love to develop the scripts directly with creators. With this on the platform, like I mentioned, it's more of a newer feature that we're introducing and something that we're still testing, but hopefully something that can be more permanent on the platform. And what this is when you have the brief there, adding a simple note where it's like, please share a script ahead of filming. So then once the brief goes through and you select a creator, we're able to then reach out to that creator and say, hey, congrats on being selected. The client has asked you to prepare a script / storyboard. Please send this over at your earliest convenience for then to be a feedback session. We then send that back to the brand, and then you're able to go in and add your comments before the final sign off for the creator to then create the content. Is this done via app or via email? What's the ideal way to communicate? So all communication through Twirl goes through Twirl, but this is something that we can facilitate via email or through Slack. We also have a chat box in the button. So if there's ever at any point a question on both the creator side and brand side, we do bring it together and liaise with both parties to ensure, it's all streamlined and you're not bombarding each other with messages and whatnot. Ooh, share a template of some examples of collaborative scripts. Awesome. So we do actually have a folder of some sample scripts, and actually that's something we can probably share afterwards, because we also have this cheat sheet with hooks / call to actions that's useful, as well as I've got a document with my usual, it's literally titled Rachel's UGC tips, and it's usually something that I send to brands right after I've just had my creative strategy call with them. And in most cases, when we do end up getting the brief through, it comes through based on our conversation, as well as also just assurance that every time a brief gets put through Twirl, we do review it first before actually publishing. So there's the assurance there that, someone on our team is looking at it, and we're there to make sure that it'll be clear to creators. And if there's any questions on our side or on creator side, you're always an email away. We'll take that up with you and decide what's best going forward. Do these different types of briefs have different content completion dates? For instance, with collaborative briefs, do the back and forth nature, do brands give more times to creators? Our typical turnaround is 7 to 10 days after the creator receives the product. So the ideal timeline for this is that while they're waiting for the product to arrive, we're working on getting that script over, we're working on getting feedback for it so that as soon as it does arrive, they're all good to start creating. In some situations, obviously, shipping can be really fast or shipping can be really slow, and that will affect the timeline. And in some cases, you might go back and forth more than one time. But in those situations, that's what the Twirl team's here for. We're here to step in and say, maybe you need to take some time to think about what it is you're after, so that we can also respect the creators' time that they're putting into this. Do you offer the collaborative option on all scripts, or are there some that won't allow this at all? We do offer the collaborative option on all scripts. If it's something that you feel, would even just give you more assurance going into it, then just shoot us an email and we'll make that happen. In some cases, obviously, when you're giving a fixed script, we'll kind of check with you to just see, are you sure it's going to be word for word? What's the room for flexibility here? As well as if the creator comes back and says, I'm happy with the script, but just this one line, I want to tweak it slightly, then it's their responsibility to check with us, and we'll then communicate with you to see if that is something you're happy to proceed with. How about in terms of revisions? How many chances do you give a creator to remake, edit content so that it's acceptable? So this is, at the end of the day, we're here to make the content that you will love and that you will test on your ads or your organic social, etc. Twirl offers one round of revision, which to some is like one revision, but really that includes everything. You can include everything you need in that revision. We do have a revision policy where the revision should not ask the creator to do anything that wasn't originally stated on the brief. In those situations, we will step in and say, hey, this wasn't on the brief, but here's some suggestions on how we can still make it work. As well as sometimes things do come up where you didn't think about it when you were briefing. We're going to be flexible to that, and we will communicate it into the creator. But in those situations, then we will need to compensate the creator, because it's not fair to penalize them for something that wasn't on the brief initially. And normally that's just an additional variation credit. So you're not spending on a whole new video. I think the good thing about that as well, when you're purchasing a variation credit, is then you still have the usage rights for both videos. So you can A/B test to see what works in that way. But of course, if you request a revision, get the revised content back, and it's not exactly how you wanted it to be, more than welcome to just let us know and say, hey, we're so close, almost there, and put it through again to get it right. I think those are all the questions. But thank you so much for tuning in, and I've really enjoyed doing this, and hopefully we do more. Thanks so much.